It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, my name is Tyler Hapney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Dungeons and Dystopias. I am your host and game master, Tyler Hapney. I have run hundreds of sessions of Cyberpunk RED and Dungeons and Dragons, and this podcast is a way for me to reconcile my thoughts on both of those systems. So for today is a very special day because I believe we are actually going to finally be ending our series on the Cyberpunk RED roles that you can play. I believe, based off of everything I've checked, that I've basically gone through just about all of them at this point, except for one, and that would be the Exec role. And these, I mean, all things considered, you know, if you're playing Cyberpunk, you would at least expect this role to be present somewhere, and it has taken me a bit to get to this point, but I mean, definitely, I think Exec is an interesting role, and I think it might even be one of my favorites, just because of all of the different sort of appeal and flavor you can throw in there. So without further ado, what does the Exec do? Well, the Exec is essentially somebody who works at a corporation, and usually they're maybe a little higher end. Usually, I mean, if you're starting at rank 4, you know, you've got some sort of pool within the company, but for the most part, an exec is somebody who's working for, a larger company, who typically have their own goals that they're trying to go through. And then obviously you've got to mix in your own exec's goals that are probably going to be a little different from what your company wants. And just all of that together creates a really interesting story, you know? So, let's talk about mechanics before we get into, I guess, personal stories and reflections over, you know, how we've used execs in my games. But let's get into what execs get. So execs actually get a lot of things, all things considered. But you know, starting out, maybe it's not so great. At rank 1, you get a signing bonus. Which, you know, is pretty great. You get some things that just for signing up. For instance, you get a full business wear suit, which costs a lot of money normally. And obviously, you know, you cannot resell the suit without raising some suspicion at your company. You might get a little angry if you do that. At rank 2, you're actually given access to a company house, a corporate conapt. So, you know, a very nice sort of high-end spot. I don't know, maybe near the executive zone or like Westbrook or some of the nicer spots of the city. This is cool because corporate housing, you don't need to pay any rent. You still need to buy your own lifestyle, but because of this, a lot of execs have the ability to essentially go all in on their lifestyle and buy the fresh food lifestyle every month, which is only $1,500. Without any rent, that's pretty affordable for an exec. So that's obviously going to be represented in a lot of exec players who do eat better, who do go out more and all that other stuff because they have access to more money, technically. But yeah, corporate housing is great. If you have an exec, I definitely recommend having a corporate conapt map just in case they decide to go home for whatever reason, or you might want to even start the session there. At rank 3, this is when we get interesting. This is when we get saucy. We get team members. The whole hook behind exec is that they get team members, that they have people who are, you know, beholden to them and will take their orders and that they can have various different things. Like there's so many different types of team members you can have, and we'll get into them here in a second. But let's talk about exactly the specifications behind these team members. They are constructed like regular player characters. However, they can't improve their skills. They are controlled by the game master, not the exec. And they cannot wear armor other than light armor jack. So no medium armor jack, no heavy armor jack, no Kevlar. It has to be strictly light armor jack. Company policy is what it says. If one of your team members die, HR will repossess the equipment and replace them during the next game session. The new hire has new stats, but, and we've I haven't talked about this yet, there is a loyalty stat, and your new team member will have their loyalty reduced to 1. So you've got to build up loyalty with your new team member. Also, this will cost the exec an additional €200 in quote-unquote hiring fees, basically bribes, to HR. So there you go. You are technically still beholden to HR as a corporate executive. They're the ones that will be providing your team and ensuring that you don't die, basically. Great. So what is loyalty? Well, every team member does in fact have a base loyalty score, and I believe you roll for loyalty at the start, or at least that's what I've seen on the Cyberpunk RED companion app, which is very useful, and you should check it out if you are interested in Cyberpunk RED. So basically, loyalty is a shifting value. You can do things that give you loyalty from your team members, and you can do things that make you lose loyalty with your team members. So generally, the idea is to treat your team members like normal people. I know that's hard in Night City, but I think you can do it. Loyalty caps, it says here, loyalty caps at a maximum of 10 between game sessions. But during an individual game session, loyalty has no limit. So basically, between game sessions, you've got a loyalty of 10 max. But during a game session, you can go up to like loyalty 20. Not that I think that would do much, but you get the idea. Here's the fun fact. Loyalty save. Here's another thing that loyalty does. When a task is given to a team member by the exec, this is where things get fun. The GM now rolls 1d6 under the team member's current loyalty. And if that save has failed, the team member in question may refuse or even botch the assignment. Or in other ways, turn or whatever. Do bad things for the exec. If loyalty drops to 0 or lower, the team member will then actively attempt to betray the exec to their enemies. So definitely, once again, do want to keep your eye on loyalty and make sure that it does not drop to 0. Not that I don't even think your game master should tell you when it drops to 0, but that just kind of means that you got to be on your best behavior at all times and not abuse your employees. Which, once again, this is Cyberpunk, so that can be hard. If at the end of a session, a team member has less than 0 loyalty, they will complain to HR, either receive a transfer or quit upon having one refused, depending on HR's whims. So that's a bit up to GM discretion, whether or not your team member gets a transfer or just straight up quits because you're such a bad boss. I mean, that could leave some self-esteem scars if you think about it. But what sort of things gets you and loses you loyalty? Well, if you compliment your team members' work, you can gain a little bit of loyalty. If you support them against management, gain them some loyalty. Giving them a bonus, obviously, loyalty. Giving them a 20% cut of your earnings is huge loyalty. Giving them paid time off for an entire game session, a huge loyalty boost. And then if you risk physical harm to save them, yeah, man, that's a +8 loyalty boost. That's pretty great. However, here's a fun one. Losing loyalty. If you gain no loyalty with a team member during an entire game session, you actually lose 1 point of loyalty. So generally, you want to do good things for your team, or else you will slowly lose that loyalty. If you berate a team member or chew them out, you lose some loyalty. If you ignore a team member's contribution to a job or forget their birthday, that's some serious loyalty loss. If you do not come through with the bonus or the perk promised, you get a serious loyalty loss. If you throw them under the bus to management, obviously, super huge loyalty loss. And then finally, if you abandon them under fire, that is a -8 loyalty loss, which is basically guaranteed to have them quit or whatever, unless you're up to 10 loyalty during the session, in which case you're going to be left at 2. So generally, don't abandon your team members. So we did mention team members do have or are created like players. And what does that mean? Well, that means they get a job. A lot of them are drivers, assassins, hackers, all sorts of things. Bodyguard. I know my exec players love having bodyguard around. Trust me, it's very helpful. Um, they have certain packages that they can kind of start off with depending on their job. I don't want to go through each and every package here, but generally, let's say we're going to start with a driver. They're going to have specific cyberware built for that. They have a radar, sonar implant, cyber audio suite, internal agent, homing tracer, and a radar detector, which obviously is very helpful for driving around and all that business. They also have a +6 to drive land vehicle and handgun, +4 to sea vehicle tech, air vehicle, pilot air vehicle. You get the whole idea. They have a lot of bonuses. And then, of course, we also have stat arrays that we can get depending on roles that we make. And if you're wondering, 4 of the 6 of these stat arrays do have an 8 in reflexes, which means that your driver is, at the very least, going to be able to hopefully dodge bullets and use their evasion skill. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how a team member works, to be honest with you. I mean, it is kind of your main steez when it comes to being an exec. You get one team member at rank 3, another at rank 5, and another at rank 9. So that is 3 team members you can have, which, I mean, to me, I would have probably a driver and a bodyguard and maybe like a corporate assassin or something, like a sniper. I think that would be probably pretty decent. At least as far as having everything covered goes. So that is just, we're still at rank 3. I can't seem to find anything for rank 4, to be honest with you, but we already have everything. But once we get to rank 5, obviously we get another team member. So presuming you're starting at rank 4, or roll rank 4, you basically just need to get up to roll rank 5 in order to get a second team member. At teamwork rank 6, you get access to Trauma Team. Yeah, that's right. You get Trauma Team for free so long as you're good enough in your company. And this is only Trauma Team Silver. So it's not going to be the best Trauma Team, but it is still Trauma Team coverage, which, it can make the difference between a win and a loss in a fight, in my opinion. Because if you're down, might be best to have that backup. At teamwork rank 7, you are now no longer at a corporate conapt. You are now living in a Beaverville house, which is basically this sort of like big mansion, in the executive zone, which is huge because the executive zone is like, I mean, come on. All right, I guess it's not a big mansion because technically you get that later, but a Beaverville house is like, it's a suburban home in the executive zone, which is obviously the most secure place in all of Night City when it comes to living there. They have corporate security. They got cameras on every corner. You should be fine if you're in the executive zone. It's going to be very hard to kidnap you or anything. At rank 8, you get Trauma Team Executive, which obviously is the best that you can get in terms of Trauma Team, at least in this role. So obviously your coverage is going to be a lot better. People are going to be able to get to you. I'd love to get into Trauma Team, and in fact, I might actually have to do an entire episode on Trauma Team because there's so much crazy stuff with Trauma Team. I think I would have plenty of time to discuss them. At rank 9, obviously we get that third and final team member. Can't get any more than that. And then finally, once you hit rank 10, you are once again getting an improvement to your house. And this is what I meant. You get a big mansion now. You get a Beaverville big mansion in the executive zone or a luxury penthouse in the corporate zone. So generally, you get a really nice house in the executive zone or a skyscraper penthouse somewhere else in the city. So generally, you get a really nice place to live. Much nicer than the corporate conapt, much nicer than the Beaverville. You get like the top rank of places people live in Night City. I mean, penthouse is basically the top when it comes to Night City. So that's really the bread and butter, sort of the advancement of the exec role here. That's every single bit of the role So let's talk a little bit about how I've used execs in my games. Well, I have players who have multiple execs across different companies. Some players have started their own companies and are executive representatives of them, and others are representatives of larger companies. I have a character who is an Arasaka exec, who's around Night City and taking it, taking obviously kind of undercover, but still he has access to all those goodies and stuff, and he's able to make a lot of influence. Because one thing I like to use exec players for in this sort of ecosystem of Night City where, somebody rich needs something done, so they contact a fixer who then contacts edge runners, and then the job gets done. Well, in that ecosystem, if you have players who fit every single role within that cycle, then why not have exec players basically making missions for other players? They have goals. Usually execs are built in with that same corporate goal so they can work towards, making things better for their own company. And that obviously can involve quite a lot of shady business practices, which obviously they're going to need help with through a fixer. And there you go. If you have an exec player and maybe a fixer player and then a bunch of other players, it might be a good idea, or at least very cool, to have the exec player be the one who's sort of setting the job up, and then the fixer player is the one that gets all the other people together, and then maybe they come along on the job just to make sure no one's getting bored. But at the end of the day, I do really like that setup, and I think it makes things a lot more organic, and gives players, I guess, a little bit more attachment to what might be going on, considering it's all custom and within the story and stuff like that. So generally, in terms of roles, I really do like exec. I don't see it a ton, but in terms of being able to make changes, exec, media, tech, all of these roles are like, they give you the tools, and then it's really up to you what you do with them. And I like classes a lot like that, personally. So we're going to get into our metaphorical monster of the week before I continue to ramble this episode up into 30 minutes or so. But I like to talk a little bit about Lazarus. Lazarus is a private security company, essentially. Their PMC is in my opinion the kind of the best way to view them. They're like Militech, but really focused more on private security. There's a whole history behind them about their leader and how he got together with a general and created this huge private military company. The name of the founder is this rich Greek guy. I'm assuming it's Greek based off of the name Nelson Katsoudalos. But he met up with this guy named Emil Lazarus, who is this former colonel in the U.S. Army Special Forces and a receiver of the Medal of Honor. So he comes in and he's hired all these people to basically train the Lazarus group and really kind of get in. And they were involved in a lot of conflicts through the 2010s. And with the success of these conflicts, we're able to grow into one of the largest and most successful specialty military service for security and stuff like that. So generally, Lazarus is, in my at least view, Lazarus is seen as, it's Militech, but I mean, they use Militech weapons, but it's Militech, but it's just a strict private security force. And they are very good at what they do. They are allied directly with Militech, so they use mostly Militech weaponry. If you're ever going to be going up against Lazarus, there's a good chance what they're using is going to be mostly Militech goods, which, I mean, it's Militech, so good weapons, but still, you're not going to be going into any Arasaka weaponry or Mono 3s or anything like that. Hopefully, when you're dealing with Lazarus, there's a lot going on with Lazarus in 2045. They are at the moment currently considered sort of the heir to Arasaka and Militech, as sort of these people that are the largest presence of security in Night City. So generally, if you're at like a mall or something and you see a rent-a-cop, that guy's probably hired on by Lazarus, because they do that. They do rent-a-cops, private, like military guys or detectives. They have it all. They're just, more focused on private security rather than public security for the good of all Night City. So just a quick look at what I've used Lazarus for in my game. Lazarus in my Night City, there was quite a bit of brouhaha that had brewed around South Night City, the combat zone, and eventually the Night City Council got a little bit concerned with what was going on. There was some perhaps nuclear incidents that were causing a lot of concern, so they hired on Lazarus to basically go in and try and sweep out the South Night City combat zone, and retake it for the good of the people of Night City. So that is, a huge ongoing storyline I have in my Night City, where Lazarus is present in South Night City combat zone and actively in conflicts with a lot of the people there because they've been hired on by the Council of Night City to, take care of it. So that's one way I've been using Lazarus, and it's worked out really well for me. I'm sure there are a lot of different ways you could include them, but that's just one simple idea. That is going to be it for us this week, however. Thank you so much for listening, and please come back next week where we talk a little bit more about Dungeons & Dragons. Other than that, my name has been Tyler Hapney, and this has been Dungeons & Dystopias. Thank you so much for listening.